Good evening and welcome to this last translation capsule of this academic year. As most of you already know, our translation capsules are free online talks between translation and interpreting specialists and members of the Department of Translation, Interpreting and Applied Languages of the University of Vic, Central University of Catalonia, and which offer different opinions and perspectives on topics that we consider of high interest. Today, it is a pleasure to count on the presence of Josh Goldsmith, accredited conference interpreter at the United Nations and European Union too, technology trainer and researcher, and Maria Perramon, professor of interpreting at the University of Vic, Central University of Catalonia, and professional interpreter who will talk about interpreting and technology. Before giving them the floor, however, I would like to thank all the people who have made this event possible, especially the coordinators of the capsules, Caterina Riva and Eva Spaza, and our sponsors, Tech for Word, IDISC, Pen Català, Eumoditorial, Institut Ramon Llull, the Spanish Association of Audiovisual Translation and Adaptation, and last but not least, the Spanish Association of Conference Interpreters. And of course, a very special thank you to all the people who are attending the event right now. Please remember that if you want to follow us in Twitter, our hashtag is ConversaTrat2021. ConversaTrat2021. Thank you very much and have a very good time with us this evening.
Thank you, Lydia, and thank you, Josh, for being here. It's a pleasure to have you with us to talk about interpreting and technology, especially because in the last few years, there have been important developments in the field of remote simultaneous interpreting and computer-assisted interpreting. But I think that the COVID pandemic has actually speeded things up, hasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. We've seen a lot of changes in recent years.
And Lydia has mentioned that you are a UN and EU accredited interpreter, so your work must have changed a lot over the past year because of the pandemic. Can you tell us a little bit how you adapted to remote interpreting in the UN and how have things changed since then? What is the current situation for interpreters working in international organizations at the moment?
Sure. I'll start by saying that everything I'm going to share is my own personal opinion. I'm not a UN staffer. I'm a freelancer. So I will tell you based on my perspective of what actually happened. So I would say that like everybody, when the pandemic hit, we just were scrambling to figure out what to do. And the organizations that I work for, many of them actually canceled meetings for the first couple months as they were trying to sort out the technological side of things. Actually, there had been some work done on testing remote interpreting not too long before the pandemic. There was a study by the UN, for example, that looked into this, and their conclusion, ironically enough, was that it was too expensive and to actually do remote, for example, to have staff at one duty station, for example, in Vienna, service a meeting at another duty station, for example, in Geneva, the bandwidth that was necessary would actually be very, very high and very expensive. You'd actually need to pay for a dedicated line between the two places to ensure that you'd have high quality audio and high quality video coming through. There are also a lot of challenges, of course. The idea for that original study was just to see if everyone is on site in Geneva, can we have the interpreters off site? But as you can imagine, that's not what things look like right now. Right now, pretty much everyone is off-site. I'll speak to the UN organizations here in Geneva because that's my primary market. That's where I work the most. And interestingly enough, most of our work in the majority of organizations, the interpreters are on site, but nobody else is. So it's just the interpreters, the technicians, and a few members of the secretariat that have been on site during most of the meetings that I service. The interpreters are, of course, not sharing booths. So it depends on the organization, but there was some work needed to try to figure out how you could rewire everything so that interpreters could be in separate booths. There was a lot of work done at the EU level to look at adding in mobile booths, pairing different meeting rooms so that some of the interpreters could be on site but not actually in the same room providing interpreting. But obviously having a stable connection is much easier if you're just down the hall. You just run the cables and you're certain that the connection is going to be good enough. And now there have been many tests at the institutions. I can't summarize them all, of course, but they're exploring having some interpreters offsite. So for example, the Parliament is looking at using Strasbourg as a hub where some people are in Strasbourg and the majority of people are in Brussels or vice versa. And they've also even started setting up some hubs in major capitals to have interpreters working from there. So the setting at the institutions is very different from the setting on the private market. On the private market, I think most people, if we're lucky, we might be working from a hub. We might have a hub around the corner nearby. And if not, we might be working from home, and that's called for a lot of adjustments. But that's the short answer to your question.
And so, yes, certainly there need to be a lot of adaptation from the very beginning. So what are some of the main challenges of remote interpreting from the point of view of the interpreter?
There are many. I think the one that I hear about the most, the one colleagues gripe about the most, is sound quality. We are working with sound quality that is not at the same level as what you would have if you're on site. And that's caused our associations to have to struggle to figure out what's acceptable. AIC, for example, published guidelines for in extremis interpreting, the idea being, of course, that this is not going to be what happens in the future, that hopefully we'll be able to go back to having high quality audio to work with. So the first thing we've had to do is learn how to adjust in those settings. And that often means that we have to say, unfortunately, the sound is choppy. Unfortunately, the audio has cut out. It also means that we need to do sound tests. Before a meeting takes place, we need to educate our clients. Ideally, it's not the interpreters who have to do the educating our clients piece. Ideally, it's the institution or the conference organizer or the agency that's hired you for that meeting who is explaining that a headset like the one I'm wearing actually will get you better sound because I can turn like this, I can turn like this. The mic is still at the same distance from my mouth. There's a lot of education needed, for example, about the fact that you can't use the microphone in your webcam or the microphone built into your computer. I mean, you can, but you don't sound very good. And so we've had to try to teach the people that we're working with to adjust the input they're giving us so that we can give them a decent quality output. And that is a long uphill battle. And it's always a struggle to determine when you have to pull the plug, when to say it's not good enough. Just last week, I had a participant who was using a headset, but there was something about the headset that she was using that just didn't work. I think it had some sort of noise cancellation that she had turned on, which meant every time she rustled her papers, we heard nothing. And in general, we just heard an awful lot of everything, also because she was leaving her sound on when the other people were speaking. So it really threw everything out of line, and that's another challenge. A third challenge has to do with how you work with a boothmate if you're not in the same place. So there are lots of different techniques. I won't go into them now. Later I'll tell you all about some of the free resources I have available, and you can check this out more. But things like using a shared Google document, for example, which is great for preparation too. You can prepare at a distance together, jot down notes. The same goes for glossaries, actually. You can prepare those at a distance together. And then you can use the little chat feature right there to speak to your colleague. You can also use a kind of shared digital canvas, basically like writing a note on a piece of paper. You can write a note on your tablet and it will immediately appear on their screen in front of them as you are writing in real time. So that's another way to quickly drop a note to your colleague. Some people have explored, for example, trying to use their WhatsApp or SMSs and things like that that they use for everyday communication. I don't really recommend that if you can avoid it, simply because you probably will have way too many notifications popping up while you're in the middle of interpreting. So if you're using that, you might get a message from your spouse saying, hey, will you pick up the kids at this time? And that is going to throw off your interpreting. So those are a few of the changes. I think another one is that interpreters have had to learn a lot more about gear and about setup to figure out how we can look and sound good. And that's been a challenge and a process to figure out how we can hear our colleague, for example, while they're working. Because if you're just in the booth next to one another, well, then you hear them when they're speaking and you can pick the channel you're listening to very easily from your console. But if you're working with a remote interpreting platform, it's not that easy. And it might actually take a lot of gear, potentially a hardware or a software mixer, all sorts of upgrades that may be necessary to facilitate our work. So many people are not very pleased about that. I would say a lot of colleagues don't believe that we should have to be in charge of our own tech. But this is the situation as it is right now, and so it calls for learning. I could go on, but I think I'll stop there. Those are 3 or 4 of the major challenges and changes.
Well, there are several challenges, you're right. Also, you've talked about platforms, and at the moment there are several platforms in the market. Have you seen any major changes or improvements during the past year, and what improvements and what changes do you envisage in the near future regarding RSA platforms?
The first major change was that RSI platforms went from being a very, very small part of the market to being a huge part of the market. Zoom took off. We're using Zoom right now for this webinar, which is being broadcast. Zoom went from being a very solid company, but very niche. I used it beforehand, but lots of people had never heard of Zoom. I mean, we were using Skypes and things like that beforehand. And so all of the consumer-facing platforms for remote meetings skyrocketed in terms of their traffic, and they had to adjust for that. The remote interpreting platforms, and I'm differentiating between Zoom and the like, Zoom, MS Teams, and all that, which are what I'm calling the consumer-facing platforms, and the platforms that are actually designed for remote. Anyways, the remote interpreting platforms, there were a few of them that existed. Probably you could count them on 2 hands, I'd say, before the pandemic. And since then, there's been an explosion of platforms. And with an explosion of platforms, there's been an explosion of options, both the pre-existing platforms getting better and better, rolling out new features. A key feature that many have had to struggle with, for example, is your handover, how you hand over to your colleague who's not in eyesight. And many platforms have built in a handover feature where generally what happens is you press a button that says, are you ready to take over? And your colleague hits another button to respond, yes, I'm ready. And then there's a countdown of some sort. And then the colleague who takes over waits till the right moment and then hits the button and takes over. But different platforms have implemented this in slightly different ways. And that was one of the first things I think that we saw platforms doing. Platforms, of course, have had to continue to improve the quality of the sound and the video that they were offering to interpreters to get higher quality meetings. Platforms have gotten a ton of money in venture capital and have hired huge teams, the more successful of them anyways, and have done a lot of marketing to try to pitch their own platform and why it's a great option. And platforms have also started, but they're not there yet, to dabble in artificial intelligence and other types of tools which can help interpreters in our work. And maybe I'll stop there and we'll talk more about some of those things a bit later on. I think you asked me what the future holds for remote interpreting platforms. And that is a very difficult question to answer because I don't have a crystal ball and none of us do. And we don't know to what extent we're going to go back to in-person meetings once life becomes somewhat more like it was a year and a half ago, and to what extent we're going to continue to have remote meetings. I personally think that we'll see a mixture, as well as hybrid meetings where some people are on site and some people are online. And I hope, but also think that we're going to end up with more meetings that are multilingual, and hopefully more meetings that are interpreted and multilingual. And that's simply because the market is changing. So beforehand, we generally were hired for, if you work in conference interpreting, obviously that's a big caveat, but if you work as a conference interpreter, you were hired for a day in my market, a half day in some markets, very rarely less than that, although it obviously depends from place to place. And now we're seeing shifts as people want to have an hour-long meeting. So how do you price for an hour-long meeting? How do you protect yourself as an interpreter for an hour-long meeting? What does your contract have to say in general for a remote meeting? So these are all changes, but I think that we're actually going to see more meetings. I think what we're going to see is the preparatory meetings, the hour-long, 2-hour-long before the big conference, where people are in different places. I think those meetings will be remote or hybrid, and then more of the larger meetings might be on site.
Great. You've mentioned artificial intelligence, and you say that RSI platforms will probably work with artificial intelligence in the future. I guess that this also includes speech recognition and other. I mean, you're a real expert on certain computer-assisted tools, such as, for example, tablet interpreting or terminology management, SimComSec. Can you tell us a little bit about these technologies for interpreters? And also, well, I know that you and Alexander Drexel run Tech Forward, and you are one of our sponsors for this series of translation capsules. And you run online courses on some of these technologies for interpreters. So tell us a little bit about the origins of Tech Forward and a little bit about the technologies for interpreters that you are so much of an expert on.
You've given me about 6 questions there, Maria, so
you can split them.
I can take them in any order I want, I guess. Let's start with speech recognition, because I think that that's a logical transition from what we were last discussing. So I know that a couple of the leading platforms, both like Zoom and platforms like some of the remote interpreting platforms on the market, for example, Kudo, are starting to explore speech recognition and other types of artificial intelligence and how they can be used for facilitating our work as interpreters and also facilitating the experience for meeting participants. So let's start with the experience for meeting participants. We have a little demo today. I think we've got the live transcription feature turned on, or Richard will turn it on right now. Oh, there it is. It's just popped up on my screen. So if you want to see it, you probably have to go to the bottom bottom corner, the bottom bar of your screen, and click live transcript. Then let me see if I can talk you through it as we're going. oops, you click live transcript, and then you click view subtitle or hide subtitle, and you can go to subtitle settings to determine how large you want the captions to be and a few other things. So I am not going to look at the captions as I'm speaking because they would probably throw me off. Just as it's very difficult for me actually to interpret if there's a live transcriptionist working and transcribing what I'm saying and it's appearing on the screen. I'm one of those people who covers it up if it's my own voice, if it's my own words that are coming through. But this kind of feature, I mean, Zoom just added this feature not too long ago. And this, I think, is an important feature, an important way to use artificial intelligence, basically just using machines, algorithms, to make meetings more accessible. And if we're talking about accessibility, in other words, making it more possible for people, for example, those who are hard of hearing, to follow the meeting, then this feature right here, and I just took a quick peek, and it's doing really well, I have to say. This feature right here will potentially help to make our meetings more accessible for a very low cost or for no cost. At the moment, speech recognition is not really reliable enough across all languages and across all accents and across native speakers and non-native speakers and across all speeds and when working with terminology. It's not there, but it's getting a lot better. And so this feature to be able to just generate live captions for those who are attending your meeting and then generate a transcript, clean it up, and pop subtitles on the recording of it is already, I think, an important step forward in terms of artificial intelligence using speech recognition. At the moment, there are a few researchers also exploring speech recognition and how it can help interpreters. So the leading researcher on this is Claudio Fantinuoli, and Claudio is working with a few others, including Bart de Frank, on doing research on how we can train machines to help us. And they just ran us as interpreters. And they just ran a very, very interesting study. It's still underway, I think, called the Ergonomics of the Artificial Boothmate Project, run by the University of Ghent with support from the European Commission and others, where they asked hundreds of interpreters what they want the machine to tell them. Do you want it to give you numbers? Do you want it to give you names? Do you want it to give you terms from your glossary along with the equivalent from your glossary? If so, where do you want it on your screen? Do you want the numbers separate from the words? Do you want them all in one column? Does it come from the top down, from the bottom up? Does the size of what you see change? So perhaps the most recent number is larger and the others are smaller. So this is all really cutting edge what we are exploring with speech recognition. And I will say that at the moment, the feature is pretty solid for numbers, and still there's a long path ahead for everything else. But we're seeing significant strides forward in speech recognition and artificial intelligence, so this may get a lot better in the near future. So I think, and the last thing I wanted to say about speech recognition is that some tools are also looking at ways, for example, to automatically generate a to-do list from your meeting, or automatic, and this is for the consumer, right? This is not for the interpreter. You generate a to-do list from your meeting. You generate a list of key points from your meeting, right? You don't have to have somebody spend hours writing the minutes afterwards. You just use a transcription and clean it up quickly. So these are all very interesting areas of speech recognition. And I will stop on the topic of speech recognition and maybe move on to one of your other questions. Which one should we do?
Yes, I ask you to tell us a little bit about the origins of Tech Forward and what you do, what that, like Alex and you do, and also tell us a little bit about terminology management tools and tablet interpreting. I don't know whether we have time for a bit of SimConsec, but especially I think you're very much into terminology management and note-taking on tablet, and tablet interpreting. So if you can tell us a little bit about this.
I am indeed. So great. I will say that Alex and Alex is in a strictly personal capacity, not in anything related to his work for the commission, but just in a strictly personal capacity. We've both always been fascinated by technology, and we've always loved sharing our knowledge of technology with others. And so that has led to many beautiful projects over the years, from the very first live workshop we gave in person many, many years ago, to a series of webinars that we gave, and eventually are deciding to take our knowledge and make it available in lots of different formats, including through on-demand courses, which means basically you can go online, sign up for one of these courses, and at any point work through the course. And we were talking about this before the session started. I have a degree in teaching and pedagogy and education. So for me, it's not just about the content, it's about how do you make that content accessible and how do you generate activities that will help learners to take steps forward and really achieve mastery as they're working with on-demand content. And this is a brand new thing. It's something that, at least in our field, basically hadn't been researched. I have a paper, an academic paper, because that's one of the many hats I wear, coming out about on-demand courses and feedback and how it all works. But I won't go too long into that. What I will say is that about a little over a year ago, we had already started on this, but when the pandemic hit, we took a hard pivot and we pushed very hard to share what we knew online. And sort of the capstone of that was a free webinar series, which started as a free webinar every Thursday. And after 3 months, we shifted to this being a monthly free webinar. And there's now 20 plus webinars in our free webinars library. So if you go to techforward.com and take a peek around, you'll see the webinar library very easily, and you can explore all sorts of topics there. So Tech Forward is webinars, it's on-demand courses, many of which are free. Actually, we have introductory courses in using your tablet and another free mini course about what we call getting the right mix, which is basically hassle-free audio, so you can hear your colleague in a remote practice or a remote interpreting setting. And then there's lots of other courses. We write a blog, a monthly column for the Toolbox Journal, which Jost Zitze has been putting out for many, many years, and we write the interpreting side of things. And lots more, including one ebook and another on the way. So that's all of the many, many ways that we've been trying to share our knowledge. And one thing that I'm very, very proud of is a brand new community of people who are engaging around technology and having these cutting edge conversations. And it is really exciting to see the conversations coming out of it. And that is something called Tech Forward Insiders. And since we're speaking to an academic audience, I'll tell all of the students out there that if you are full-time students, you can drop me a note and join us in Insiders for free for all of your studies and have these interesting conversations. So that's the Tech Forward pitch. And now let's talk about some of these topics about tablets and about terminology. I could talk about tablets for hours. I wrote a whole book on it and have many courses about it. But the long and the short of it is that you can use a tablet in many different ways. You can use a tablet to help you with preparation, from researching subjects, using semantic networks, basically like Wikipedia, how it's linked across languages and linked from one topic to another as a way of exploring a subject. You can use it for consecutive interpreting, so taking notes on your tablet, and that's actually what I wrote my master's thesis about at the University of Geneva, and then published several other articles about. And you can use your tablet in the booth, both to look up terms as you're working, to jot down notes. One of my favorite things you can do is annotate documents. So both beforehand, you can write in sort of a translation of what's going to come up. And also, if you're in a drafting meeting, well, one side says we think it should be this, the other group says we think it should be that. You jot down both of those options. They're in different colors, which is really easy just with your stylus. You tap a button, change colors, and you've got all of that right there for reference purposes. And then there's lots of other ways you can use a tablet too, for productivity as an interpreter and a translator, really anyone who's on the road, to help with invoicing, time tracking, and all sorts of other stuff, and for SimConsec. So you asked about SimConsec. SimConsec is the abbreviation of simultaneous consecutive, which is a hybrid interpreting modality. What does that mean? What that means is that you are in a setting where you would normally be working in consecutive, but you're also recording the speech. And then you work from that recording to render the speech. So the idea is that you might get the best of both worlds. You get the ability to hear the speech twice. You get the ability to work from simultaneous, which it's been shown is more accurate. Mark Orlando has done a lot of interesting research on SimConsec, and people tend to be more accurate in this context. And if you practice, you even get the ability to speed up or slow down the original, to jump to a specific point in the original. Say, one of the good things about consecutive is that if somebody repeats themselves, you don't have to say it twice. You can just cut that bit and move on. In simultaneous, you can't. But what if you could, by simply clicking on that little asterisk you put in your notes to jump to the next bit? SimConsec, it's still very cutting edge. The jury's still out on what notes look like if you take the same kind of notes, if you take much more slimmed down notes. And so there'll be a lot of interesting research, I hope, coming out around that. But you may be able to work in a different way, which might help to further facilitate our work as interpreters. Now, there are potential downsides of this as well. Some of Mark's research showed, for example, that people had less eye contact with the viewer when working in SimConsec. But after you told people about it and trained them to focus on eye contact in SimConsec, you could do it a bit more. I'll just say briefly that SimConsec originally was not done on a tablet. It was done using a smart pen, which is a pen with a built-in camera and a built-in recorder. And that would record the speaker and then record, your notes. You use special kind of paper for it. And this is still possible. And if you want to learn more about that, one of the webinars in our free webinar series is an interview with the founders of the masterminds behind the SimConsec approach. So you can learn a lot more about that there. The last thing you asked me about was terminology. So I love terminology, and I unabashedly will say that I love terminology, and I think it allows us to do our work much better because we can actually use the terms that our clients want to hear, right? They're experts, and if we're going to come across as experts, as highly qualified communicators, then we need to be using the right terms. The problem, of course, is it's tricky to learn tons and tons of terms. And if you bounce from one meeting to another, like most of us do, then how do you keep all of those in your head? And the answer, of course, is that you can't keep them all in your head. Over the years, you get more and more of them, just rolling off the tip of your tongue very naturally. But technology can help us with this. And so there are quite a few tools out there. Interpreters Help, Interpret Bank, Interplex, and I think those are the three leading tools designed for interpreters that allow you to keep your glossary organized to quickly look up a term as you're working without having to type the whole term. And actually, you can even misspell something, leave out the accents, and it'll probably still get the right word. Some of these tools will look beyond your current glossaries. So they'll start by looking in the glossary for your meeting, and then they'll look in all of your glossaries for that organization, we'll say, however you've organized it, and then in all of your glossaries as a way of trying to find the right term to help you out as you're working. And there are very interesting strides in automating this with speech recognition, as I said before. And there's also tons of things that one can do about extracting terminology from documents to very quickly prepare for them. So I've said a lot, and I know there are questions, so I will stop there, and then we can go into more detail about any of these subjects.
Well, as you said, I asked you about 6 different questions in one. So, and I know that probably there are some questions in the chat, but before Eva takes over and tell us what the questions in the chat are, finally, the question. Do you think that technology will ever replace interpreters?
I'm hedging my bets, as you can see. I don't think technology will replace interpreters in all settings. I think technology will facilitate communication in some settings where perhaps we wouldn't have had interpretation at all. And we can already see this actually in Skype, for example, where you can hit a button and it does speech recognition and then translates what you say to another language. And there are various tools sort of playing with this on the market, and none of them are good enough for interpreting. So, and I actually think we keep saying that eventually, artificial intelligence and automatic, translation and interpreting will arise. And basically, not really. That said, there are some settings where this is already happening. So if you look at booking.com, for example, this is about translation, not interpreting, but it's a good example. The people who write the text for booking.com use restricted language from a very small subset of languages. They don't have a lot of embedded clauses and so on. And so by changing the input, you can actually train the output so it's very, very good. Do I think that we are going to want to change our input? No. Jonathan Downey wrote a very interesting book about artificial intelligence and machine interpreting, where this is one of the possibilities he envisions. And he says basically, would we ever want that to be the case? No. So my general feeling is no, that artificial intelligence will help us to do our jobs better from automatic captions, which you can then clean up afterwards. They're not perfect from the get-go. I really want to stress that. I was recently watching automatic captions for a woman who was deaf, who, when she said the word deaf, it came up as death or dead. And that's hard. That's a huge glaring error. And as long as there are huge glaring errors, this technology is not going to take over. So $1 million question, I have hedged my bets, but yes, for the moment, I think we're safe. But we have to keep learning how to use these technologies so we can get better and better at what we're doing.
Well, of course, there's this saying by, I don't remember the name now, someone that said that interpreters will not be replaced by machines, but by interpreters who use machines or who use technology. I don't remember now the person who said that. Well, thank you very much for sharing all your thoughts and knowledge with us. And Eva, I think that probably there are some questions in the chat that you want to throw so that Josh can answer them.
Well, thank you very much for this really enlightening talk. And first, I would like to say that, well, you have received lots of warm comments on Tech Forward, how useful it is, and specific, I mean, for Tech Forward insiders, etc. So thank you. And then the first question was, some people asking about professional interpreters' reluctance about changes, but also about speakers and participants being against changes or against even using headsets, etc., etc. Do you have that view? Do you have still find much reluctance to change, to technical change?
Again, this is a double-barreled question. Are professionals, so interpreters and translators, open to change, and are our clients open to change? I think that we are seeing change being ushered in slowly but surely. Just as CAT tools, computer-assisted translation tools, have now become very commonplace, I think CAI tools, computer-assisted interpreting tools, will also become commonplace. And just by way of example, when I started talking about tablet interpreting 6-7 years ago, nobody was doing it. And now many of my colleagues are using their tablet in the booth. They don't even call it tablet interpreting. They're just like, oh, I have a tablet and I bring it to work with me. So yes, these changes are happening and many of them are interested in learning more. As for our clients, it's a very fine line to walk for us. Many of them don't know, and I dare say some of them perhaps don't care. I know that that's controversial to say that, but we tell clients time and time again, do not take a call from a car on 4G or cellular without a microphone, and we still have it happening, and we've been doing this for a year. So perhaps it's unfair to say that they don't care. Perhaps it's life circumstances, and that's the best place that they can take a call from. And then our job is just to say, okay, if you're going to be there, let's at least try to get you to use the headphones that came with your phone. So it's slightly better than the built-in microphone. And so it's very incremental.
Okay, thank you. Then there were also specific questions about sound. I mean, when you said sound, I mean, there was sympathy from our audience. And by the way, let me remind all our participants that they can post, you can all post your questions in whatever language, well, whatever language we we tackle, but Spanish, Catalan, English, whatever, Josh can speak them all and we'll pass these questions too. So as regards sound, there were people asking about which platforms have improved their sounds. The question was very general. It didn't mention whether they referred to interpreting platforms or in general.
I can't really answer that question because I haven't used every single platform and I haven't tested every single platform, and I don't test every single platform on a monthly basis, and the platforms are making changes on a weekly basis often. So it's very, very difficult to answer that question. What I can say is that many of the difficulties with some of the platforms being used on the institutional level, so some are used by major institutions, and many of those initial hiccups have gotten better. So I haven't gone out and done detailed testing on each platform to say which ones have gotten better and how much better. And again, it really depends on the incoming sound. There are ways to clean it up a little bit, and we have a short free video on our YouTube channel about using an app called Crisp, KRISP.ai, to clean up sound. And in the book that I'm writing right now, which is called The Interpreter's Guide to Audio and Video, which I'm writing with renowned audio gear technology expert Naomi Bowman, we go into lots more detail about this. So stay tuned. It's coming out in just a few weeks.
Great. We have also another question about respeaking. In respeaking, speech recognition software is used and edited live before it is presented. would you consider it another form of interpreting?
That's an excellent question, Christina. Thank you for that question. I am really interested in re-speaking. I've done a little bit of work on it, but haven't gotten as far as to build a whole course about it or anything like that. So let me back up and tell people what re-speaking looks like. Re-speaking is different from the live generated captions that you're seeing right here in Zoom. Re-speaking, there's a human, at least one, maybe more than one, that is listening to the input with headphones and speaking to a tool that has been trained to their voice and that has been prepared in advance. For example, just like we feed in keywords to our glossary management tool before an assignment, a re-speaker will feed in the names of people that are going to come up, the key terms, and so on into their tool, probably usually drag and dictate, but maybe others, before the event, so that, and they'll practice the pronunciation of difficult names like tech forward to make sure that their tool knows that when they say tech forward, it spells it this way and it's one word and so on and so forth. So it's a human using speech recognition with a machine, but that machine has been trained or prepared in advance. They also often use macros. So you might say next line, next speaker, switch to speaker 3, things like that. And you have to learn how to do that if you're going to work in re-speaking. I also should say that re-speaking can be monolingual, basically. So somebody listening to me speak English and then re-speaking into English, or it can be interlingual. Right, so not intra, which is within one language, but inter, across languages, where somebody would listen to me speaking in English, basically interpret what I'm saying into Spanish or Catalan. We'll say, add in those macros and those things for the machine so it knows to stop, how to format it. And so we're working across languages. It's really exciting stuff. It's very much hybrid stuff. And I think interpreters could be trained as both inter and intralingual re-speakers. I know plenty of them are already doing it. And if that sounds interesting to you, definitely go out and explore this, learn how to do it, and then take it from there.
Well, thank you. It's really good work in the midst of two fields, very promising fields. Somebody was asking about Dragon, which for speech recognition, which doesn't run on Macs. Can't wait for some Mac compatible software which would allow us to do that without workarounds. I don't know if you'd like to comment on that.
Yeah, and the person who's saying that is somebody that I've gone back and forth with many times on speech recognition. Hello, Lilia. She took our course. We have a course on speech recognition for interpreters, and then has been leading a whole group that's discussing speech recognition inside our Tech Forward Insiders program and exploring this cutting edge stuff. The long and the short of it is that Dragon used to have a Mac version, doesn't at the moment. It's just for PC right now. And we'll see what comes about. I would need to do more research on what re-speakers who have Macs are using, if they're not using Dragon. There's another thing worth bearing in mind, which is that speech recognition can happen in the cloud, or it can happen on your machine. And if it's happening in the cloud, there are confidentiality issues that you need to bear in mind as well, because I mean, this meeting is public, but they aren't all public. So please bear that in mind. So I don't have an answer to that. It is an issue. There are workarounds. I won't go into them here. I will briefly say that we also have a free video on our YouTube channel about using a tool called otter.ai, OTTER.ai, and pairing that up with your incoming audio, whether it's from Zoom or something else, to generate captions at the time. It's not about re-speaking, but it is just another interesting example that some people might want to explore.
Thank you. There was a very specific question about, does the closed caption feature work together with Zoom's interpretation feature?
As far as I know, yes. I could also say that Zoom closed captioning there are two ways to set it up. One is with the automatic closed captioning, which is what we're using today, but you can also set it up to have re-speakers working or live transcriptionists working, because not everybody who does live transcription does it by re-speaking. Some people do it using shortcuts and other things that I won't go into, but you can actually set Zoom up so it takes that feed from the people who are either typing or speaking and displays it to your users. And for those of you who are at our summit, the Innovation in Interpreting Summit, just a few in February now, we had live captionists, re-speakers doing that, and we paired up Zoom to do that. But yeah, we had interpretation at the same time. You can definitely have interpretation and live captions at the same time in Zoom.
Okay, there's again another question on subtitling. What software would you recommend for generating subtitles for translations on PC and Mac?
To answer that question, I need to know if you want to do this automatically with speech recognition or if you want to do this manually. I'll speak to the automatic side because I think it's the cooler side, and tell you that a tool that I use is called sonix.ai. It's something we use, sonix.ai. It's something we use in TechForward to generate captions and then clean them up. It has a very nice interface so that you can align captions, and you can actually feed in some keywords in advance. So when I say TechForward, it actually recognizes it correctly. So I don't have to go through and correct it as we're going along. You can sort of click on a word and hear it. You can have video or audio as input. So I'll just say that that's a great tool to play with if you are interested in exploring a tool that does half of the work for you in advance, and then you go in and clean up the subtitles.
Wow, I was going to close with that, but I think we have this question, which could be the final question. Do you think that various strong interpreters' accents would put up a stop to all that perfectly accurate transcription, therefore prevent technology winning over humans? Smile.
As I said before, the technology is not good enough to handle all accents, all idiolects, right? The way an individual person speaks, all terminology. Interpreters, however, do tend to speak clearly. That's something we're trained to do. But I don't think, I mean, I know plenty of interpreters who have regional accents who, I mean, I can tell you because when I ran the summit, I had Jonathan speaking and he has a very strong regional accent, and there was a glaring difference between how the technology transcribed what I was saying and how it transcribed what he was saying. So yes, accents are a thing we need to bear in mind, and it certainly is slowing down, making it more difficult for technology to make progress and ensuring that we'll be around for a little bit longer.
Thank you very much. I think we wouldn't stop asking you questions, and everybody's thanking you for very specific and very to the point answers. But since these are called capsulas, they are meant to be quite short and precise as your questions and answers have been. So I think we have to close it now. We are really glad that this is the final capsula in our first year of capsulas. So thank you very much, Josh. And thank you very much, Maria, for inviting Josh. So thank you very much.
And thank you. It's been a pleasure to speak to you all.